Okay. Um. Yeah. So, like I said before, today we'll probably my priority is to round things up, and we're doing that with the topic user personas. Um. Does anybody know? Which is probably the next question I have on my slide for us today. Yeah. Okay. So essentially, we'll be talking about what user personas are, why we need them, and how to create them. So before we start, can anybody give me like an insight? So when you hear, um, yeah, so Treasure Olishu, it looks like you would have to rejoin the meeting. Yeah, you did that. Okay. So can anybody tell me what they think a user persona is? I feel like we mentioned it once in a while, and then when we're going through like the research methods and categorization, we also kind of touched on it as part of the deliverables, and it was in that article. Does anyone want to go? Like, what do you think a user persona is?
Um, I think a user persona is like a fictional or made up character. Not really made up. It's like a persona representing like your customer group for that particular product.
Okay.
So it's made of characteristics of your ideal customer for the product, something like that. So they are where they live, what they do, their goals, things like that. That's what I understand by user persona.
Okay. You obviously did your homework. Because yeah, I mean, if I'm going to move on straight to what the characteristics of your target audience. Chinedu, welcome. Oh. You are early to class today. You came before everybody.
Hi, Evie. Sorry about that. I'm still in church. We're kind of setting up for tomorrow's service. That's why. Sorry about that.
Hmm? What is going on here? Okay, oh, welcome. Oh. You know, not going to gaslight or anything. We're talking about user personas today anyway, and Zoa gave us this amazing definition, in which case I feel like we should just carry on and be going because that's essentially what it is, right? They use grammar archetypical users whose goal and characteristics represents the needs of a larger group of users. So essentially, the reason why, or yeah, what a user persona is what we heard here, right? It's just trying to represent who it is that you are talking to. Um, and then we're moving on to why we need a persona, not persons. We don't need persons. We need a persona. What is this? All right, so we know what it is. Can you give us? Can somebody tell us why we need it? Just going to tell us why we need a persona.
Hi. Okay. So um I think we use user personas like to kind of understand the need of who we are producing a product for, basically. I think like to put ourselves in the shoes of the user. I hope I'm correct though. And put ourselves in the shoes of the user to kind of understand their pain points, to understand what they need, to understand how to address what they need. Just basically to understand the user and their pain points.
Okay. Okay, so you said we need a persona to be able to understand the people we're creating a product for, and to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the users and understand their pain point. Summary, right? Okay, does anyone else want to go as to why we need a persona? No? Cool. All right. Your, what is this? Why is it here? Give me 1 second. My slides are misbehaving today. Yeah, you know what? I can't find the actual textbook definitions that I have for you. Okay, wait. Yeah, I found it. And I'm going to update it because there we go. So textbook definition is it is to create reliable representation of your key segments for reference. But the main thing or in field, the essence of the personas is, like you said, to understand the pain points. But then there are other reasons why you also create a persona, right? So sometimes you've done research and then, like, we've been involved in the process, so we kind of like have an understanding of who these people are, but creating a persona helps us like make it more concrete, right? So it starts as an alignment process as well for the team to say, okay, we've done research, we've talked to all of these people, who do we then think that we're talking to, right? So based on different opinions, we come together and say, yeah, okay, let's create this prototype, this persona where we are all agreeing that these are the things that we heard. These are the needs of the people. These are their motivations. And so depending on the scope of the research project, we may have more than one personas to represent different groups of people and target audience. So in addition to like having empathy, it is also like an alignment to, right, to say, let's all be on the same page as to who we are solving for, and as well as like the empathy part of it, where we're like, oh, this is what these people are actually going through, and then we can humanize our users. So there is the thing where we're saying users, and just it feels very abstract, right? So the process of creating personas also kind of helps us humanize the people that we are creating the personas for. Now, I kind of already gave us a hint as to how we do this, create the personas, but if you cut it in my explanation, or you already know because you've done your homework, how do we create personas? Who wants to go? Kind of already talked about it. Is this silent mean no idea, or we're thinking about it? Say it's when I don't know. SMH for you. Okay. Well, I'm going to take that as what he says. This is what I don't know. So moving ahead to say how exactly do we create personas? It depends, right? And I say it depends because there are like different types of personas essentially. So depending on the type of persona you're trying to create, it will determine the process of creating the personas. So here's 3 types of personas according to NNG. And people call personas, like in this UX field, people call or people categorize personas in different ways, right? But the reason why I use this is because it kind of gives us more insights into how these personas are created and is more broad when it comes to categorizing personas. So we have like the proto personas, right? And essentially this kind of persona, you create it from maybe existing data in the system. So if you already have like a launched product, and then there are people who have signed up for your products, so you have data around who they are, what they do, if you collected that information, where they live, and stuff like that. So you can use that data to create personas. But half the time when it comes to proto personas, this kind of personas is actually based off assumptions, right? And the essence is to align the team. So many people, all of us have an idea of who our users are, but it lives in our brains. I actually did this on a project I worked on to say it was this exact same scenario where all of us kind of felt like we knew who our target audience is, we knew who our customers were, and obviously because we had a live project and we had people interacting with the project, so we could make some claims. Yeah, but the thing is, we had varying opinions on who exactly was the customer. So I had to do like a workshop where I said, okay, fine. We have an idea of who these people are. We're working with this project day in, day out. And so when we get feedback from support to say people are complaining about XYZ thing, we get a bit more information into who those people are. It was a real estate project. So when people are signing up for tours, we get insights into the kind of people that sign up for tours, but then we needed to make it concrete, right? And so we had a workshop where I was like, all right, everybody, let's put down in different, let's answer a bunch of questions about who we think our persona is. So essentially we all created personas and then we viewed it together to say, all right, this is what we think, this is what we're feeling. It's like the answers were somewhat similar, but then we could also see the areas where we differed on opinions as to what our users were going through and stuff like that. And then following that, we had to do review, or I had to review existing data to just make sure that we're aligned. So proto personas is not necessarily from primary research or whatever. It's just looking at the existing data, if any, or just making assumptions based off gut feeling, and we know who our users are. So that's essentially it. And the major con of this obviously is sometimes this UX process and exercise, not everybody is into it, right? If we did this, there's a chance that people might feel like it was a waste of their time, because again, the persona that we're coming up with is not really based on any research. So we should not ideally be acting on it, but it's a great way to align the entire team. So if you're able to pass that message across before starting, then it's a great use of time. And creating alignment is very important for your team, because then you can move forward faster, right? So qualitative personas is based on a small sample research. Essentially, when you're doing user interviews, maybe you interview 10 people max. I don't know if you've had to interview 10 people from the same user group. Ideally, it's around 5 or 6 people. But so that's just the reason why I say small qualitative research data, right? Because you're not interviewing tons of people. You're not interviewing everybody, or with everybody with every nuance that is going to use your system. So you take small group of people, you interview them, and then based off the people you interview, you create your personas. It's the same thing too for field studies or usability tests, right? It's just a group of people that is going to use the products, and then you're going to watch them use the product, and then you're going to make updates and iterations based on that. One of the key things here is, one of the key ways to bring out the persona from this kind of process is you literally just profile whoever it is that you are interviewing, right? It's a male, it's a female, it's a they, it's a them, they are non-binary or whichever, and then you move into a little bit about yourself. What do you do? You can. So I feel like I don't feel like, what do you do as their work? You might have to choose one. So if you're interviewing 5 people, right, you may have to choose one. Another thing you pay attention to is the age, right? And then do an average of the ages you've heard, or do a range if that's what you want to do. If you want it to represent a group of people, you might do a range. If you want it to represent a particular kind of people, right, then you might do an actual figure. But ideally, it's just going to be the average of the ages you've seen. Another thing is location, where are the people you spoke to? You can zoom out to say US, you can zoom out to say Lagos, you can zoom in to say Lekki Phase 1, depending on how much data you get. So essentially, you just profile the people that you speak to. And then some people may, actually, when it comes to profiling the people you speak to, yeah, those whose lifestyle or whose behavior aligns more with your product is who you're going to profile. So sometimes the first few interviews you're not probably getting, you may not be getting the right kind of people, and maybe you have to tweak your screener questions to be able to get more quality users. But those who align more with what you're trying to build or the problem you're trying to solve, or the pain points you may have identified, yeah, those are the people that you profile and then make your personas. For statistical personas, it is essentially quantitative data. So you're looking at the data on the screen. So for example, in a banking system where you provide all of your information about yourself, including where you live, what you do, your phone number, your income, and all of those things, you can create personas based off the group of people. And I've seen them do that actually. So what you're doing is saying we have a large group of people that have similar background, they have similar job descriptions, or they have similar age. And so you pick something and use to categorize them and then look for people, or yeah, pick something key that is most amongst everybody. So sometimes that might be like their income, right? And say, okay, regardless of what you do, people that earn within this income bracket, we're going to categorize them as this, and then this is the persona. So you look a bit more into their behavior over the time, and you're able to spot pain points and the rest, right? You can even go as far as reviewing like complaints that they may have laid to the company, or what their interaction is, or what they spend more on ideally. But the data you're getting to build your personas is going to be from qualitative data that's already in your system. So for statistical, you need to have existing information on users, and it has to be a lot, right, that you can review and be able to categorize. For proto personas, you might have that, but for the most part, it is just assumptions we're making because of some interaction that we've had with the user or some data that we've had on the users. So when we say how do you create personas, it depends. All right. Another it depends that happen is at the phase of the project where you're in. Again, which is kind of what qualitative also covers for you, right? So half the time when you're doing qualitative to get personas is maybe for a new project or for a new feature that you're trying to launch, and you want to know a bit more about people that might be interested in the feature, right? Proto is for aligning your teams. Maybe your goal is to align your team to say, yeah, we all have different varying views of what our persona is. Let us get on the same page, right? Statistical is after your product is launched and you want to be a bit more clear about who exactly is using your product. So you can also pair statistical with qualitative. So if you did qualitative before to say these are your personas, you can do statistics after your product has launched and you have a lot more user interactions, and compare both to be able to show, to be able to tell if, you know, what we thought, who we thought our personas are versus who they actually are. Are they the same or are they not the same? So you can do that together. It's the same thing with Proto. You do your assumptions, do some research, and then you compare to see, you know, what's the difference between these two people. So that's essentially what it is about personas. I want to see if I have anything else to add here. Oh yeah, so like just a sample persona, right? Some of the elements. Now, what you put into your persona definitely depends on your goal. It depends on the projects that you are working on. Ideally, you would have an about session that just summarizes a bit more about who the person is, or what characteristics they have that represents your target audience, right? And then you can talk about their frustrations. That's like one of the key things that has to be in your persona anyway. Frustrations, pain points, needs, called different things. I think needs might be different from pain points and frustrations actually. So pain points and frustrations is in the same It's in the same thing with needs. So you need to have that in there because that's where the empathy comes from, right? When you're seeing, what the people are going through, then you're somewhat motivated, I guess, to be able to build better solutions, or you understand a bit better why you need to build better solutions. And then their goals are things they want to accomplish. Sometimes this aligns directly with your product, right? If it's like a fitness app, maybe they want to have summer body, right? And frustration is they can't find like a routine that works for them, or they don't have enough time, or whatever it is, right? So sometimes the goals is directly aligned with the frustrations. Sometimes they are like more arbitrary things that may or may not be related. So you have to think about it. If it makes sense, maybe only include information that is directly aligned with the frustrations. Everything else that they want to do, they want to be an astronaut or whatever it is, can be in the about session where you're summarizing what their dreams are. But so, and then social profile, again, this may be there depending on, let me look for an example of another persona actually. But again, it depends on the product. So if you're doing, if I continue with the fitness app example, some people are maybe very, I don't want to say outgoing, such that they are documenting their every life. So it makes sense to have like a feature for those people where they can share that they trekked 5,000 something in one day, and they can share that with their friends, and then you can give them bragging rights or whatever. So that information might be useful for you, and you might include that in your personas. But depending on what you want to learn about the user, depending on your product itself, some of this information may or may not be included. The only ones that are basic. And then that also extends actually to demographic information, right? Whether or not, I think where they live might be fine, but what they do may or may not be as important. Maybe what you're more interested in is their income, which is not here and things here. Which is not here, right? So maybe you want to know them by their buying power or whatever it is. Whether or not they are single, does that help you in your information? For the real estate project I worked on, it does help us because then there are apartments that are more suited for single people, there are apartments that are more suited for couples, there are apartments that are more suited for couples with kids. So knowing what that is for you kind of helps. There are communities also that are more suited for those kind of people because they are closer to schools, they are closer to supermarkets where you can easily make like runs and stuff like that. So again, it really depends. Whether or not your favorite brand is something in the real estate industry, favorite brands really doesn't mean anything and doesn't help us do anything. Social profile really also doesn't help us do anything, right? So it would depend on the kind of product that you're building to help you figure out any other additional information. So let's look at the other one that I have here. So in the previous one, let's see, we don't have anything about this person's education in here, but in this one you do. Right. And then there's information about their work experience. There's information about the devices that they even use. There's information about their tech exposure. So maybe this product is highly technical or whatever. And then you would ideally be targeting people who are already in that space. So in the previous persona, none of this information added up, right? There wasn't anything about patterns and behaviors. So essentially, it might be you're trying to figure out how to make this a lifestyle product for a person. For example, Uber might be interested in patterns and behaviors, right? Before going ahead to say, yeah, at this point, maybe this is where we should allow people other rights, which is different from the way cabs work, where you have to go to the road and wave down the cab, right? So they're like, oh, based off user behaviors, it might make sense for the cabs to come and pick users from their homes. Motivations and goals is in this one, which is essentially the same. from the previous one. So like I said, whatever is going to be in your project, in your persona depends. Um, when you're doing your projects and you need help, I can always jump in, and so we can tackle out what your it depends situation is. But I apologize because that's how far I can go. Like it really does depend. Okay, so the last bit is when do you need your personas? Well, again, it also depends, right? When I was talking about how I kind of give insights into when you would need personas, right? If you're figuring out that your team has different ideas of who your target audience is, then you would ideally need your personas to come up at that point. But the best time to have a persona is after you've conducted your research, right? Do some primary research, do some primary research for a product that is just starting, do some qualitative research. So one of the reasons why we had to bring up a persona in the previous company I worked in, company had been around for like 40 years without personas. So one of the reasons why we had to do that is we were going to take away some features and we're going to launch some other features. And we needed to know who our users really were so we can decide whether or not a feature was going to stay, depending on the people who relied on those features the most, right? We could have just taken it out like Elon Musk and let the people react before we say no, maybe put it back. But that's not very smart. So that's one of the reasons why we had to create a persona at that point. And it's one of the reasons why I won the arguments for creating a persona, because to be honest, the company had survived until then without one, right? But if we're going to make such a major and drastic change, then we can't just do that, on a whim, especially when we all had like different ideas of who the customer was, right? So that's one way to have a persona. I mean, ideally, again, as you're starting your project, you should create a persona, and personas change and your users evolve as you pivot your product based on user feedback. That is also a change in persona. So ideally, you should update that to say, okay, this is where we were, and this is what we started with, and this is what the solution was supposed to be for this set of people. But based on what users are actually doing, and the set of people that are actually using the app, this is where we're pivoting to. So it should be a living document. It's not something you do once and then dump it, and then we've gone over the persona phase. Cheers, everybody. Moving on. It's supposed to be a living product that as you pivot and as you move on, you make updates to, essentially, because you have to. It's an empathy tool, right? If you are empathizing based on outdated information, it is going to hurt your product decisions anyway. So it's another reason why you need to do a persona and why it has to be kept up to date. Trying to see if there's any other reason. I know that is when. Yeah, that essentially covers it. So launching a new product or launching a new feature, you should already have one, or you should be updating your personas, or you should be creating one. If you want to align your team, yes, you should create one as well. And so yeah, that's essentially, when and why and what we need a persona for and stuff like that and everything. Does anybody have any questions for me on this one? Nope. So it was very easy to understand, and you know why you need a persona, when you should create a persona, how.
Hi, Evie.
Hello.
Hi, Evie.
Hello, Chinedu.
So mine is more of the how. So
Okay.
I know you listed 3 types of persona.
Mhm.
So like, how do you actually go about it? Is it that you just sit down with with the team and just say, okay, let's assume that okay, this starts. So is it based on assumptions, or are there like surveys carried out on different prospective users, and then from that survey, a summary or a conclusion is drawn that okay, based on this, this we can see that this is a user persona or how exactly. Sorry if you may have explained it and I'm taking it back.
Yeah,
Apologies for that.
yeah. Apology accepted because I have explained it before, but it's okay. You know,
Okay.
it's all right. But yes, that's it, right? So depending based on I was trying to see if I could pull up a workshop, the workshop that we did um for aligning my team on the personas, that would be because like we all had like I said, different versions. So give me a second, let me see if it's something that I can pull up and show you people. Otherwise, I'm going to use my mouth to explain. No, sorry, can't find it. All right. So let me go back to the slide where I have the types. Right. Yep. So like I said, how depends on the type of persona you're trying to create, and the type of persona you're trying to create depends on your goal, right? If you are trying to align your team, and what happens is like half the time when we build products, we just come and say, this is the problem that we're coming to solve. All right. And then we go ahead to the building the products to solve the problem phase. We don't always go out and do small research to figure it out. And another thing is, if it's a product that is well, if it's an issue that is well known, like this delivery issue now, you kind of already know the kind of people that will use the products. That's the thing. You kind of already know because you are probably a user. Your neighbor is probably a user. You get so you kind of already know that, and then you just launch into building the app. Maybe do some analysis, competition analysis to just see the features other people have. I don't even know if that's what we call. I don't know if we call it competition analysis. You do some landscape review, right, to see what features other people have on their apps, and then duplicate that on yours and launch, right? In that case scenario, it is all, based on an assumption of who your customers are. But if you're really trying to figure out what your unique value proposition is or how to improve of the system, you should ideally do some research, right? You should probably talk to people, or you should review your data to see, if you have like drop-off rates at some point, or if there are frictions in the process. And then depending on how much data you have, right, you can then start to categorize people and then put them under, or you can also review like customer complaints information, like what are people always complaining about and what kind of people complain about these things, right? So if you want to improve your product, if you want to be a bit more intentional, if you want to improve your experience, then a persona helps you do that, right? Because by learning about your users, by learning about what their needs are, you can better address those needs. Otherwise, everybody will be making assumptions and be going. Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. But you can take that guessing out of the entire process by just sitting down together and saying, this thing that we all have in our heads, let's visualize it somewhere, right? And so whenever we want to build a feature, we come back to the drawing board and be like, this is the person that we're going to serve. Is this feature going to appeal to this person or not? So that's another reason why the persona should be there. You should always have to reference it to say, yeah, we want to build a product, but from our interviews, from our conversation with people, they are not likely to use this. So I did a research project recently, and they had an initial survey which was filled with tons of leading questions and assumptions. One of the questions was, how much would you pay for a therapy session, right? And people said how much they would pay for a therapy session. Now, based on this survey, you can create your personas because we had the age, we had the location, we had the employment, and all of this like demographic information. And there are also some issues around, what are your pain points? It would have been sufficient to create a persona, except, I insisted that we do interviews, and then we did interviews and realized that the problem is not that people will not pay for therapy, is that people did not even seek therapy to begin with. right? So even if I say I'm going to pay 3K for therapy, if I find myself in that situation, therapy is not going to be the first thing in my mind. So imagine going on with that assumption and building a product and then wondering why nobody is using your app, even though your price point is perfect. They said 3K, you put 2.5, right? So that's like one of the key things why you need to do research and one of the reasons why you need to create your personas out of that. So whenever I had to speak to the client going forward, it's just like, from the interviews and the people we spoke to, nobody said they were going to do this thing that we are assuming or we had initially assumed that they were going to do. So if you have your personas, it is going back to the person and say, remember these guys, remember these beautiful people that we spoke to. Yeah, nobody needs this. Or remember these beautiful people that we spoke to. Here are the frustrations they've been complaining about and we haven't fixed them yet. Do you get? So doing interviews is one of the ways you can do that. Another way is just hosting a workshop where everybody gets to create their own persona. So it is ideally going to be like again, depending on what it is, it's probably just going to be a template where you have personal details, tech exposure, everything, and then you fill it out. So what that workshop will look like would be you filling it out based on who you think the persona is. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the exercise, we come together and we review each persona. What would help the most is if there's somebody from different department, customer support, from the development team, from marketing and sales, from design team, obviously, that we can now come and start saying, yeah, this is what we're talking about. As a customer support agent, I haven't heard anybody say this, right? So this is probably not accurate, or this is where people are leaning towards. So when you have those people on the call, essentially we're trying to correct some of those assumptions as well. But it would be best to also review actual data or speak to people directly. Did I answer your question, Chinedu? Chinedu has gone to prepare church for service. Does anybody else have any other question?
Thank you, Evie. I actually got what you said. Thank you.
Oh, so I answered your question. Okay. No. Anybody else? We're good? We don't have any more questions? Okay. So that's essentially what we're doing for our last class today. I was going to work us through, but maybe tomorrow we can do that through this. Remember this, this project or this mini project that we were supposed to do. So I was going to work us through. Okay. I was going to walk us through my process of filling this out, but the person that laid the complaint is not here, and she is supposed to be our knowledge expert in this field. So,
Who?
Onyeka.
That's Treasure.
No. Onyeka is
Oh,
different.
okay.
Yeah. Oh, did Treasure not join back? He kicked
So
her out.
Treasure was unable to. Yeah. So apparently someone kicked her out, or somehow she got kicked out, and she's been struggling to join in. So I want her to create another.
So as I was
email.
trying to record, it said that I would have to kick her out, and I was like, and she would have to join back. But apparently it wasn't letting her join back in. Yeah. One's recorded. And if she has questions, she can reach out to me. All right. So since our subject knowledge expert is not here, this is where we're ending today. Essentially, we've gone through the entire process, including how to choose a research method. But when it's time for your project, please feel free to reach out to me, because I know like there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to research. It is not the linear process of, oh, you speak to somebody and then you move on, right? Like I said, sometimes the people you speak to are not exactly who you should be talking to. Then you have to tweak your questions, your screener questions, and reach another audience, or sometimes you add questions along the way. So based off insight somebody gave you when talking to them, you update your interview questions, and then you have to ask another question again, and then finishing that process to do like your surveys and whatever. So I guess we'll have a bit more hands-on knowledge when it comes to doing the project. If you reach out to me for help, like if you don't, I have resources that I can share that would also be helpful to you. But in the absence of any more questions, I'm done for today, or even done. Really, Leslie.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna
this is our last class. This is Evie's last class on user research. Is Evie's last class on user research. Our class tomorrow will be kicking off